Hi everybody, Adrian Plass here,
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
and it's number 58,
It is.
and there is no significance again whatsoever about that number.
No, I don't think so.
No.
But what has been significant is we have heard from some more people about the pictures that are important to them. And
We
one
have,
of them is from somebody we've known for a long time, actually, whose dad was German. Well, he's German, but he's lived in England for a long time.
Yes, it's fascinating, really, and you feel you'd like to know a bit more about it. His dad was, came into the war at 17,
Yeah.
and Greg has got a picture of him, and I think spends quite a lot of time just looking at this picture and wondering about his dad's, particularly about his dad's feelings, because apparently his dad wrote a memoir which was mostly factual, but with very little feeling in it.
Yeah.
And he wonders how he felt with Hitler coming to power,
Yeah.
and with what was happening in that country, nobody knowing what was going
That's right.
to come next. And obviously, it's a very, very powerful trigger for him in trying to understand his dad, who sadly has now died, and his mother doesn't.
And he can't ever ask him those questions.
No, he can never ask him
No.
those questions. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a very, very poignant and pungent image. That,
And we had a parable. I don't know, those of you who've been in the boat with us will remember that somebody had saw a painter painting with a brush that just had one bristle, and created this very beautiful tiny painting that could only be seen through a magnifying glass. And we said, anybody come up with a parable for that? And somebody has. And basically it's about this brush, this threadbare, if you say, brush being put into a pot with lots of other brushes, all of whom were quite up themselves because either they were very tall and strong or they had lots of bristles, and they despised this brush until the painter came and took it, and with this one-haired brush, painted a beautiful, detailed, tiny picture. And they realized that actually each of them had a purpose. And it comes right back to what Paul said about the body and the thumb being just as important as anything else. It was just beautifully written.
it was
wasn't
very, very well written. Yeah, it was.
Well, yesterday we were talking about the prodigal father leaning out of his window, as it looks as if he was, looking down that road and then running to meet his son and walk with him that last bit back home. And we were thinking, weren't we, Adrian, about how far sometimes you have to go down a road to meet people if you really, really, really want them to come home.
Well, I think it's bewildering for those who have been taught a very simple form of evangelism or Christian outreach, because you can find yourself in the most odd places with people, and you can't rush them off somewhere. You have to be with them and you have to work with them. So
And sometimes you have really good intentions. You're going to bring them all. And then you kind of stop just before you get to the place where they are and think, I can't do the last bit. And I remember it was a time when we were trying to do something as churches together in the town we lived in in this very tough area. And the churches got together and they decided to claim it for the Lord. And I'm not knocking this in itself, but we did all walk round this whole area and we sang and we prayed and we claimed it for God. Fine. I'm really not knocking that. What I am remembering with great sadness is that when we came to actually do the work in that area, very few people wanted to be involved. They didn't want to go down a road that led them into some very, as far as they were concerned, very dangerous areas, and connect with people that they didn't feel they had anything in common with and didn't know actually what to do. So it's always a challenge,
And I completely understand that.
Oh,
actually,
so do I.
It isn't as easy as saying, "Oh, you should go and do this, that, and the other," or mix with certain people. People are so complicated. When they when they tell the truth, when there's a place where you're able to be really truthful, we hear so many different reasons why people don't want to leave the place they're in.
Yes.
And I used to do a silly sketch with a friend where I got him to actually interrupt a real meeting where I was speaking and come in and say, I gather you want to speak to me. And I was a bit reluctant and said, well, not now. And he said, no, I'll do. And I had a bottle of whiskey or something there. And I said, I just want you to take this away from me. And so he said, oh, fine, I'll just take it out now. But I wouldn't let go of it. And we ended up rolling on the floor, fighting over this bottle, with me saying, take it, take it, take it. And him saying, I'm trying to take it, you don't want to let go. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a bit of a crude example. But for other people, I think we've mentioned that loss, so much loss, that you can't actually believe the fairy tale, that it could all change.
And also you're frightened because at least you know whether it's that you have an addiction to a bottle or whether it's just that you kind of feel, at least you know yourself. You may not want to be that person anymore, but there's a great fear in changing or being changed and losing that identity that you had, isn't there?
And like the rich young ruler, I mean, he really wanted to follow Jesus, probably, but to lose his identity so totally was impossible. To drop the cloak of whatever it was, status or riches. It wasn't the money. It was, how will I be me if stop
Who will I
here
be?
and
That's
stop
right.
having this? Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And of course, some people, you have to go so far back, don't you? Because
well, that's
things
true.
happen.
Some people start from much further back than the rest of us.
Yeah.
And the problem often is that people, someone gets converted, whatever that means, and I know it has a meaning, but there is a sense in which after that results are expected. Some people start from much further back than most of us.
Yeah, they do.
A very good friend of ours once, after talking to her in some length and understanding where she came from, I wrote this, and it's called Rescue Dogs. Some of us are rescue dogs, beaten and mistreated once upon a time. Food was an irregular surprise. Existing was the most pernicious crime. Some of us were caged for hours. We made no move, no noise, no fuss. We hoped that being good would stir the hearts of those who seemed to be in charge of us. Some of us have not been taught a truth those shadow people never knew or did their best to hide, that there are times when freedom and obedience go racing through the wild meadows side by side. Some of us are not sure we are rescued. Bewilderment dies hard, terror fades, but never quite departs. We cower now, just as we learned to cower through all those wasted days, and wait for unaccustomed love to soothe and heal and grow our damaged hearts.
And of course, people don't always look like rescue dogs, do they? That's what I was thinking as you were reading it, Adrian. When I think of a rescue dog, I tend to think of somebody showing fear, somebody scruffy, somebody... And actually, we probably tend to think of people who are in that situation as being like that.
Well, they scrub up pretty well, don't they?
Many people look fine.
We know people who cope remarkably well.
We
know what's going on. Yeah. Very briefly, that little parable about the one hairbrush.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think for some of the people who have been through this, God is working very patiently with a little tiny brush, just changing little minuscule parts of them. And it takes a lifetime to produce a picture that is acceptable to everybody else.
But it's only with that level of delicacy of the one hairbrush.
That's right, yeah.
That you're going to do it. It's no good taking a big old brush and trying to make it happen.
No.
Oh my goodness, we went quite a long way down the walk then, didn't we? And we learnt quite a lot about walks from kids that we worked with in various situations, actually, as well as our own. some of them looked a bit more like rescue dogs. Some of them had come from very difficult
yeah.
situations. And we did a lot of walking, didn't we? We did some walks that were miles upon miles. And I think we learned that in order to keep the group going,
Yeah.
we needed you to be at the front as the leader.
Because I could walk well then.
Oh, you could.
Yes.
And you were up the front. But we
Yeah.
realised that if I was also up the front, then we'd
Yeah.
lose lots of people left behind, the stragglers. And I remember we had an asthmatic boy, and we had a very overweight boy, and we had a boy who was very, very timid and really couldn't cope with the whole thing. And so I realised that I needed to be at the back with them.
Yeah.
And I needed to be there to kind of tie the shoelaces when they came undone and pull along the one that really was reluctant to go, and push along the one that was a bit overweight and didn't want to go, and encourage the asthmatic.
Yeah.
It's both you need. Sometimes we tend to think we only need leaders, don't we?
Yes, or people at the back.
People at the back.
Which is a metaphor we won't pursue now. But I do think that if ever anyone ever wants to paint a picture, you could paint a picture called Jesus the Shoelace Tire.
Yes.
And it would be a wonderful picture.
He did a lot of that.
Patiently tying the shoelaces of a rather plump boy who was doing his best to continue on a walk.
Well, we said before, didn't we? Every time the disciples thought they knew exactly where Jesus was going, he would do something on the way. And like in Samaria, stop for 3 days there.
That's right, yeah.
Tied a few shoelaces there.
You never know. The hurry up thing, it doesn't work most of the time. And when you look at any average church, I mean, we're a funny old bunch, aren't we, in churches?
Of course we are.
But like you hear those mothers sometimes saying, "Get here,
Oh, we
here,"
did.
to
No, we
children.
were on this walk, weren't we?
Yes.
And there was a boy who was fiddling around climbing a tree, and his mother, she went through the whole gamut, didn't she? She
Yes.
started saying it quite mildly, and
Yeah.
it
Ended up
crescendos.
shouting and screaming at him, and he still didn't come down.
No, but in a way, said in quite a different way, I think it's very easy for people organising things and leading things to basically say, "Get here, hurry up."
Well, I can. The problem is if you're okay, and things are going all right, and also if you're a professional Christian, you know, you have a lot of motivation that other people don't have. So you just got to be a bit careful. That's all. I've been taken down some funny little roads in my time, I can tell you, but some of them are very funny. And this has really not got anything to do with anything except after we did a talk involving something about the prodigal, I went out into the corridor.
Oh, we were at Scargill, weren't
We
we?
were at Scargill House, in Yorkshire. I went into the corridor and there was a little girl called Iris there who was 2 and one of the most powerful individual human beings I've ever encountered in my life. And Iris, who obviously hadn't been at the meeting, obviously thought she needed to take me somewhere. So she grabbed my hand with that absolute determination that very small girls have, towed me along the corridor, out of the door, into the middle of the basketball court or whatever it is, with huge determination and purpose. When we got to the middle, she dumped me in the middle of it and ran away. And I didn't.
She went back in.
And I didn't see her again. So I don't know what was going on there.
No, I think there's a parable there too.
There might be, but it's, maybe you should always go with Iris when you need to and see where it's ended up.
Oh, you certainly ended up with somewhere new. Yes, you did. Yes,
One
you
of
did.
our favourite stories in the Bible is the story of Ruth and Naomi. We hardly need to say how that connects with what we've been talking about. Here's Naomi speaking now.
My early days were good. Mother and father, may the Lord bless their memories, called me Naomi, which means pleasant and joyful. I married a good man, a very fine man named Elimelech, and in due time I gave birth to a son, Mahlon. My heart was filled with love for him and with gratitude to Almighty God for allowing me to draw daily from such a deep and inexhaustible well of joy and fulfillment. Look, I overheard one of the women of Bethlehem whisper to another, Naomi has a son. Well, in the following year, Kilian was born. A second son, 2 sons, a good husband and 2 sons. It's easier to be kind when you're happy, and I wore my name as a flower wears its bloom. Pleasant and joyful, I was Naomi. And even when famine forced us to seek a new life in the land of Moab, I remained strong. My men were beside me, pillars of safety and strength. God would protect us. They all died, all of them, all 3 of them. Elimelech was the first, and as I watched the light fade from his eyes, I collapsed like a corn stalk bending beneath heavy rain. It was so hard. But I had my sons, and they married 2 Moabite girls, Orpah and Ruth, fine women. Then Mahlon died of a fever. My Mahlon, my inexhaustible well of joy. God took him, and the well ran dry. Within days, Kilian became sick with the same fever. My prayers fluttered away, blank-eyed birds that never returned. Kilian died. Well, a traveller told me that the famine was easing in Judah, and I might find food there, and very least there'd be a chance to die among my own people. So I set off with Orpah and Ruth. But I knew in my heart it was wrong for them to leave Moab. Go back, I told them. Find husbands among your own people. Oh, such weeping, such grief, such shaking of heads. Orpah did turn back finally, but nothing would persuade Ruth to leave me. If I'm honest, part of me wanted to be left alone with my misery. Have you ever lost everything? Everyone? The things or people that made you what you were? If it's not in your experience, you cannot begin to understand. When I arrived in Bethlehem with Ruth, local women crowded into the street, calling out, "Look, look, she has returned. It is Naomi." But it wasn't, it was not. No, it was not Naomi, not pleasant, not joyful. It was a woman with the twisted serpent of anger and self-pity coiled inside her. Do not call me by that name. Call me Mara, because the taste of my own life on my tongue is bitter. God has abandoned me. I shall not be that other person again. So, after that, who did I become after that? There is a book bearing the name of my daughter-in-law Ruth. Ruth, the book of Ruth. Dear Ruth! All the way from Moab to Bethlehem, she loved me and tolerated me and refused to leave me, even as I denied that any possibility of joy remained in my life. I was wrong, of course. Ruth was there. Beside me from beginning to end, Ruth was there, and for a long time I was blind to that sweet gift from God. Read her book. See how our fortunes change beyond the limit of dreams. Ruth became married to Boaz, my kinsman, a man blessed with wealth and kindness in equal measure, and she bore a child, Obed, a boy, who was to renew my life and sustain me in my old age. There was a moment, something I shall never forget. The time had come at last for me to take little Obed on my lap and care for him. One of the women standing nearby pointed in my direction and whispered to those around her, "Look, Naomi has a son." I smiled. A sad smile, but a new one, a real one, pleasant and joyful. You see, they were right. Once more, I was Naomi.
What a journey. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.